overheating. Hello and welcome to another Neimoidian ASMR video. This is my third video. This is another request that I'm doing based on the feedback that I got from my first video. One other request video that I've done is the sound chip video, which is online hopefully by this point, and it's a lot of different tapping noises. So if you enjoy tapping induced ASMR, you might enjoy that video. This, however, is just going to be a soft whispering video. A few people said that they just liked the sound of my voice, so I'm just going to talk in this one like this, hopefully for about 15 minutes or so, maybe a bit longer or shorter, depending on how my throat holds out. As always, I do apologise if I have to stop talking and take a quick drink, because, as I've said, talking like this for a while does wear your throat out a bit. So, I'm sorry if I have to take a drink. I'm also sorry, since I'm filming in the quietest room in my house, which is also the front room, and as such, you do get noises from passing cars and groups of drunk students. So if you do pick that up, I do apologise for that. But as I've said, this is the quietest room in my house, in my flat. Sorry, I don't live in a house yet. So, as I've said, I'm just going to be talking like this for a little while. So, just so you're not staring at a wooden chair for the duration of this video, I've also brought my favourite Star Wars figure that you can watch. Perhaps he might do something interesting, like wear his hat correctly, there we go. Or perhaps he'll just stand there. So, I'm going to take a quick drink and then we'll have a little chat for a little while. So, since we're going to be talking for a bit, I thought maybe I would perhaps first tell you a little bit about myself and then move on to a bit of Neimoidian or Duros related discussion. So, for those of you who don't know me personally, my name is Lizzie. I'm half English, half American. I live in the UK at the moment, and I'm currently in my final term of my final year at university. I'm studying physics, specialising in astrophysics, and I've come to the conclusion that I was very clearly not sane when I made that decision. I have what can be described as an abusive relationship with physics, in that it beats me to almost tears on an almost daily basis, and yet I can't leave it. I keep going back to it because I can't live without it. If that's not the hallmark of of an abusive relationship. I don't know what is. But it will give me a very respectable degree, and hopefully with that a fair amount of job security in the future. I'm hopefully at the end of this year going to have my master's degree in, as I've said, physics, specialising in astrophysics, which means I get to write my dissertation this term. So, in the interest of relaxation for both you and for me, I'd rather not think about that too much for now, if it's all the same to you. Let's see, what else can I say? I've lived in 5 different countries. In order, they were England, where I was born, Belgium, where I lived for 5 years. I went back to England for 3 years. Then I went to Israel for 4 years. Then I went to Colorado for 4 years. Then to Estonia for 1 year. And I'm now back in the UK in my 4th year back here. Pardon me while I take a drink. Of those countries, Israel and Estonia were my favourites to live in. I still regard Israel as the 4 best years of my life, for many reasons. You could say, in some ways, my Neimoidian obsession began, or at the very least grew, while I was in Israel. It didn't reach the level that it is now until I was living in Estonia, though. I was 18 at the time, and it was just after New Year's 2010, and I was visiting my mother in Colorado, and it happened literally by accident. I was randomly browsing the internet, and I decided that I wanted to check on Wikipedia. Now at that point I had kind of grown away from Star Wars, but when I went to check Wikipedia, I randomly went to Lot Dodd's page. That's why I brought the Lot Dodd figure. And I saw that there had been a lot of updates since I last looked, which, for all I knew, could have been a couple of years prior to that. And in that time, I saw he had been in a Clone Wars episode, and that he had a palace, and I became very interested by this. And this fueled a sort of Neimoidian craze, if you will, whereby I spent several days researching them and looking up pictures of them on the internet. And of course I watched the episode of Clone Wars, which is episode 4 of season 2, called The Senate Spy. It's a very good episode, and what really impressed me about it was that it dealt entirely with diplomacy. There wasn't much action in it. There wasn't any action in it. It was all about diplomacy. showed me just how sophisticated and expansive Clone Wars actually was. So it was almost a pincer movement, if you will, of getting me back into Star Wars, because I had the Neimoidians on one side and my sudden interest in the Clone Wars on the other side, and literally within a couple of days I was a Star Wars fan in a way that I had never been before, and it's remained like that since. And I have to say, when I started out in 2010, I never thought, even just 4 years later, that I would reach the point that I'm at, where I would literally, not even literally, I would actually have a Star Wars character named after me, a Neimoidian at that. I took it upon myself at that time, those years ago, to put Neimoidians in a better light, and in many ways they've brought back so much to me. So it's been quite a journey, and I've enjoyed all of it. It's been absolutely amazing to have something that I can cling to that strongly, that gives me so much inspiration as both a Star Wars fan and an artist, because I found so much inspiration and motivation in the Neimoidians. It's allowed me to improve my art to levels I never thought I would actually reach. So that's another added bonus. Pardon me while I take another drink. So I suppose you could say 2010 was a very life-changing year for me. It was also the year that I started university, so life-changing in more than one way. Now, I have to say, my time at university has been varied. I've had some okay times and some absolutely dreadful times, and in that time it's been amazing to have the Neimoidians to cling to, that I can keep going back to and find comfort in. So I'm very happy I learned to love them so deeply just before my university years started, and I'm hoping I'll continue to have them as I enter the real world as a working adult. I might even buy a few extra Neimoidian pieces to decorate my desk with when I have a job, and assuming that also that I have a desk. So, what else? Well, I said quite a lot about Israel. I didn't say much about Estonia. Now, I came to love Israel, I think, mostly because of circumstance. When I went to Estonia, I was considerably older, and I learned to love the country for the country. And I'm not saying I don't love Israel because of the country, because I do, but I think I learned to have a deeper and more profound appreciation and understanding for Estonia, because I went to many places, I ate a lot of local food, I saw different cultural sort of places and shows and things like that. I didn't do touristy stuff. I did a lot of stuff that actually a native resident of Estonia would do. And I've always said that if you ever want to get to know a country well, one of the best things you can do is simply go to the supermarket, because that's something everyone does. You can see how the local people live their lives. You can see what they eat, and it gives you the opportunity to try new things. And in my experience, more often than not, you like quite a lot of the new things you try. Estonia gave me a new appreciation for different kinds of fish. I've always liked fish, but Baltic salmon for me is the best kind of salmon. It's even better than Scottish salmon and lots better than Alaskan salmon. It has a very subtle and refined taste. It's not quite as fishy as either of the other two, especially not as fishy as Alaskan salmon. I also have a very big soft spot for Baltic herring, and since my father, who was the British ambassador in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, moved from there, his posting ended, I had been craving and looking for a type of fish that would be a lot like Baltic herring. And I'm very lucky that I found a Romanian deli on the high street here that sells Baltic herring. Now, they sell it from a Polish company, but I have since discovered that this deli sells foods from all over northern and eastern and even some southern parts of Europe. So I like adding those different kinds of flavours and foods to my everyday diet. And I think when I go shopping this weekend, I might pick up another bag or packet, they don't come in bags, of Baltic herring, and perhaps try a few other new foods. I do want to try the gherkins they have there. I had some absolutely outstanding gherkins when I was in Estonia. When I lived there, a snack, for me a good snack, actually probably more of a meal given the way I ate back then, I'll tell you about that in a minute, was a piece of local black bread, about 3 or 4 different types of cheeses. I had a local Estonian cheese, raclette, Roquefort, and I think this was another local type of cheese, but it was very soft like a brie, but a lot stronger, and a thick edible orange rind. I don't know what it was called. I might have a photo of the label in my photo album, but it was very tasty. So I had bread, I had some cheese, I had a spinach piruka, which a piruka is basically a pastry. I believe the Finnish term for it is piraka, and any Estonian speakers feel free to correct me, but I seem to remember the plural of it was pirukad. So the spinach piruka I had, it was about that big, that thick, just as it says, filled with spinach, and I think it had ricotta cheese. They were very tasty. So whenever my dad and I went to the supermarket, we would buy a couple of those. So when I had my snack or my meal, I would break the piruka in half and take it up with me. Sometimes I would actually warm it in the microwave first and melt some Roquefort cheese in it. It was very tasty. And then I would also put a kind of salted biltong like meat. I would have some of that. It was basically Estonian beef jerky, but very different flavoured. I think on the packet it was called something like basturma, but I'm not sure. And then if we had it, some smoked salmon. So all in all, it was a very, very healthy snack or meal. And while I was in Estonia, I mentioned in my first video that I have anxiety problems, and they reached a kind of climax. They may have actually even begun in the summer before I went to go to Estonia, when I was packing. I'm terribly sorry for that awkward cut, but my camera card ran out of space, so I had to go and deal with that. So, as I was saying, the summer before I moved to Estonia, when I was still in Colorado, I became very stressed by the amount of packing and from having to do my IB exams, and from what happened the 4 years that I was there. They were not the best 4 years, and I think by that point it kind of snowballed, and I became very ill that summer, and it lasted into my move to Estonia. And what happened was that I became, oddly enough, it was food that did it. Food made me very, very nervous. I am extremely emetophobic. That's the fear of vomit, for those who don't know. And whenever I would try to eat, I think I was afraid of becoming ill. My anxiety was literally that bad that I couldn't eat out of fear of becoming becoming ill because I was so sick. And what happened was, every time I would try to eat, my throat would close up, and to the point where I couldn't even drink water sometimes. Speaking of which, sorry, Senator. My throat would be closed up so tightly that I couldn't even drink water, and obviously this caused me to lose quite a lot of weight, and it changed my eating habits quite substantially. So that, combined with the kind of food that I ate while I was there, caused me to lose a lot of weight that I had gained while I was in Colorado. And I'm sad to say I've gained a lot of that back being in university. But yes, I felt the healthiest. I mean, after the worst of the anxiety had subsided, I felt the healthiest that I had been since I was 13. So that was a very positive effect. Curiously enough, I think Neimoidians had a very big hand in helping me overcome that anxiety. Whenever I felt a panic attack coming on in public, I would put an episode of Clone Wars on my iPod, and even if I didn't watch it, even if I barely listened to it, just knowing that it was there would calm me down enough to let the attack subside. And within less than a month or so of becoming crazy Neimoidian girl, the attacks had stopped entirely, or almost entirely. They had decreased in their frequency. I used to get them several times a day, every day, and they decreased in their intensity. Now, I still do get panic attacks to this day. They are much less predictable, but at the same time, they are also, when I do get them, for the most part, much, much less intense. And I can even stop them entirely now from developing into a full attack. And I do that literally by thinking about Neimoidians. I was actually in a supermarket in London this last summer with my dad when an attack came on. I don't know what caused it. I'll get to that in a minute, but it was a more severe attack, but I managed to think about having Neimoidians with me, and it allowed me to see the attack through. Even literally just holding my phone, which has a lot of pictures of Neimoidians on it. The background is even a picture of Lockdard. Just holding my phone can actually make me has all my Neimoidian pictures and Clone Wars videos on it. So they have been immensely helpful to my health as much as anything. They are literally what calms me down. They are my go-to thing when I'm having an attack. And I think the attacks nowadays are based on or around being outside of my comfort zone. So for me it would be being outside of my home or my university. Basically sort of outside of the little bubble path that I've drawn for myself where I feel most comfortable. And even though I've been to the supermarket more times than I can count, it's still out of my comfort zone, and it is sometimes a place that can trigger an attack for me. Even just one of my local supermarkets. Or sometimes if I'm in the car and we're driving simply just to go out for dinner. The restaurant is slightly it is outside of my comfort zone. It's not a part of my normal path or routine, and like I said, that's a good place to trigger an attack. It's just thinking about how, even for just a split involuntary second, that I don't want to be here, or I feel a bit nervous. But if I have my comfort object or person, as it is for some people who get panic attacks, with me, then I can calm myself and see the attack through or stop it entirely. Now, as I've said, my object is my phone because it has everything I need on it. For other people, it's another object or even a person that helps them to see the attack through. So it's different for different people. Some people can't stop the attacks but still feel comfort from their object or person anyway. I think on the severity scale I probably rank towards the lower end, but it doesn't make the attacks when I do get them any less fun, or any more fun, I should say. And it's just something I have to live with and do what I can about, and hopefully maybe one day get rid of. But if I can't, as I've said, it's just a matter of riding it out, doing what you can to mitigate it. And I consider myself fortunate that I am on the lower scale, and I don't get these anxiety attacks very severely. And my heart certainly goes out to people who do get them severely enough that leaving home is actually difficult, because as much as I like staying at home, I still like to be able to go out when when I want to, and when I need to, with no problems. And for some people, it's not possible to do that. So, as I've said, I consider myself lucky for what I have. And if any of you are listening who do suffer from anxiety attacks or anxiety in general, it's nothing that you should be ashamed of. It's nothing that's your fault. It's never your fault. It's nothing that you should be made to feel like you're weak for. And it's nothing that you should be made to feel bad for. The brain, just like any other body part, can get sick too. It can get worn out, it can become tired, it can become imbalanced with different chemicals, just like any other body part. And I think the world should treat mental, I hate to use the word mental because of the connotations with it, but mental problems with the same amount of respect and importance that they treat physical problems, because just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. Now, you can't see anxiety per se, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And it doesn't mean it's just in a person's head. So, as I've said, if you do suffer from anxiety, don't be ashamed of it, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. And there are things that you can do to try and make it better. The best thing I can recommend is just simply to do what you need to if you have anxiety or an attack coming on. I'm not going to recommend anything specific because I'm just a crazy Neimoidian person. But I do recommend that you should see a doctor about it, because he or she will be able to tell you what you can do to make things a bit easier on you. So, don't feel bad for it. Don't be ashamed of it. It's a part of who you are, and just like you, it can change. It's not something necessarily that you're going to be stuck with. It can get better, it can change, and there are things that you can do about it. So, that's my little 2 cents about anxiety. If you don't have anxiety but you know someone who does, please do treat them. Don't put them down for it, because as I've said, it's not their fault. And do treat them with respect and kindness as you would any other human being, because at the end of the day, everyone is just another human being worthy of the same amount of respect and dignity as everyone else. And if they tell you, if there are things that you can do to help them if they're having an attack, then of course do what you can to help them, even if it's simply leaving them alone for a short while, because there are a lot of people who get panic attacks who simply want to ride them out on their own and don't want to be touched or spoken to or even looked at. So if that happens, the best thing you can do is just walk away, make it known that you're still nearby if they need help, but that you're giving them their space just to walk away and wait for them, or read a book, or listen to music, until they're ready to come back to you. But as I've said, sometimes it can be important to stay nearby in case the attack becomes severe enough to warrant medical assistance, in which case you may have to do that. So, as I've said, this is just my 2 cents as an anxiety sufferer. A doctor, or even some internet pages dedicated to the subject, will be able to give you more information, possibly more valid information than me. So I do not want to discredit those. But I've now been talking for about 40 minutes. It's the evening. I would like to have my tea and perhaps study or play some video games for a short while. So I'm going to stop here. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've maybe found some part of it enlightening. I didn't talk about Neimoidians quite as much as I wanted to. But if this whispering video goes well, then maybe I might do another one just about Neimoidians. So, if you're asleep by this point, I wish you very pleasant dreams. Thank you for listening. If you're not asleep, thank you for listening anyway. And as always, may the Force and Neimoidians be with you.